Good morning. We are about to have a, introductory experience into the theory about how to harmonize in a greater way with nature. And we all know that nature in and of itself is a nourishing and vital experience for us to be able to enjoy. There is ample scientific evidence that it does actually have a physical and psychological effect the time that we spend in nature. But I'm an advocate that our ability to be able to experience nature is greater than we've ever known. And I'm going to suggest some ways that you might experiment with how to increase the dynamic flow that is moving through nature and around us, and can be actually directed with some intention through our own body. So part of this is to gain an appreciation of the energetic dynamics of the mineral kingdom, plant kingdom, animal kingdom, and how those correspond to different parts of the body and the mind, and eventually also the patterns of the soul. So if we could bring up the first graphic, I consider this one to be very much of an artistic masterpiece that was put together by one of our attendees today at Nelly. And it reflects a multitude of things. In the middle, it represents the mineral kingdom. That's the very center. But you'll see different rings as you come out. The second ring is the plant kingdom. The third ring on the outside is the animal kingdom. And then there are three other rings beyond that. There's a powder blue, a pink, and a white. So these individual rings for me also correspond with birth order, iris, and the steps that we go through when we are becoming self-actualized in some way. I mean that the mineral kingdom represents things that have to do with individuality and the distinction of one's own presence or existence or soul. And the experience of the plant kingdom is how we basically integrate our social emotional experiences with others, and then how we extend the diameter of that to be also inclusive of the animal kingdom, which for me also corresponds to the global connection. So three different levels: self, others, and all. So those three, if we will appreciate and at times experience them differently, it increases the likelihood that we can energize those for our personal, physical, or emotional benefit. This is a torus. A torus is the energetic field that shows the distribution of energy as it goes through different stages of existence. So it circulates from the inside out. It comes up like a fountain, and that fountain moves upward, outward, and then falls downward and cycles back in again. And this takes in all of the different dynamics of physics. Now, inside the human body and around the human body, this torus is occurring. If we will examine how this torus moves and appreciate its existence, we can now move the experiences of the mobility of nature through the systems of the body, and the goal is to eventually appreciate the circulation of life in a greater degree through the body. Now, here's what it's really about. It's really about circulation on multiple different levels. So this circulation from the mineral kingdom, it has a dynamics unto itself. And we can talk about what that means, because that's also earth and air. So we're going to go through 6 different elements: earth, air, fire, water, wood, and metal. We're going to go through the dynamics of those 6, relate those to the body systems, glands, organs, and also the relationship to different ancestors. So we'll find out that the circulation of life force has a great deal to do with how we feel. Now, this particular picture here is one of my favorite pictures for the mobilization of energy through the experience of feeling. This is what I call a drop of water, obviously, but this is the closest correlation I can give you for the bridge between spirit and matter. So why is that? Well, water is the bridge between the mineral kingdom and the plant kingdom. The mineral kingdom unto itself, to me, doesn't have consciousness, nor does it have a life of its own. It doesn't have a spirit. But the plant kingdom has a different form of life, and it has the capacity to be able to respond to what we do, even though in my own experience, I don't know that plants do or do not have an individual spirit. But the mineral kingdom feeds the plant kingdom, and the bridge between the mineral kingdom and the plant kingdom happens to be water. Now, for me, the bridge of water is the bridge of feelings, and the primary language that we're wishing to circulate in this dynamics is the language of the soul. And the language of the soul is primarily feelings. So feelings circulating through the mineral kingdom and the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom can provide the means for us to utilize the experiences of nature at a higher and higher degree. So it's all going to come back to circulation and the circulation of feelings. Then these feelings, they also have correspondences to vibrations, because the spirit body, which we'll get into discussing in a few moments, it has a vibrational experience, whereas the soul has a degree of love, but not corresponding to a specific vibration. Now, these vibrational units, if you look at them closely, you'll see that there is a brown one in the middle, and for me, that corresponds to the mineral kingdom and the earth. It also corresponds to the experience of what we call the number one girl, who provides a social dynamic to show us the number one lesson in life. Next to her is the red, and that happens to be what we call the two boy or her husband. This is the father's mother and the father's father. If you go one step further, you go into the emerald green, and that's the mother of the red one. That's the great-grandmother, father's father's mother. She's obviously married to father's father's father, and that's the gold. Now, so these are the sequences of color coming out of the father's family, but the last two, that's father's mother's mother, which represents the animal kingdom. And then there's father's mother's father, which represents the dynamics of ultimate force or power. This is the experience of the distribution of life. So the colors to your left are the vibrations of your father's family. Then the colors to the right, where the white line kind of begins, there's a powder blue line. The powder blue line represents air, and it also represents the number one sun. This powder blue line also represents, emotionally, it represents inspiration. It also has the capacity to be converted into aspiration. Aspiration means I want to do something, become something, or create something, or grow. Ideally, the choice made here actually produces an increase of the torus and the water and the circulation of life. Next to the powder blue is a darker blue. That's his wife. Mother's father, number one son, mother's mother, that's his wife. So these two work in unison like all the other pairs also do. Her mother, mother's mother's mother, turns out to be the pink on the far right, and her husband is the yellow-green. So the yellow-green is the symbol of what's called the metal of the mind, or the light green sword of truth. So the yellow-green corresponds to mother's father, and he's obviously married to mother's mother, where the light green sword of truth also corresponds to places in nature that are about metal. Most forms of metal that we utilize are derivatives of the use of fire, and they are forged in the fires of the red on the opposite side to produce a different outcome. So the light pastel pink, this has to do with the experience of what we call the four-girl quality, or the transformation by the heart, the receiving of the heart. This is where the dynamic upward mobility of life is extending the growth against the forces of gravity. This is a flowing circulation of life. And eventually, what we would like to do is to encourage you to consider that this is actually liquid, and the liquid would be your own feelings, and this would be the circulation up through eventually the bottoms of your feet, up through the legs, up through the interior of the body, and cascading over the head and shoulders and back down again. This is a circulation that is an ancient circulation that they use in Qigong, and it's an exercise for being able to circulate life through individual organs of the body. Next. This is the drop I was referring to, a single drop of water. I like the feeling of the touching of it. I like the tactile sense of it. And one of the elements of learning the mineral kingdom and the plant kingdom in combination with the animal kingdom is the sense of tactile presence. So sometimes when it comes to the mineral kingdom, I have rocks around and I have a collection of different minerals, and I like to have a tactile sense of them. And I even have created a broad number of images using minerals in the past. And I've learned at times how to be able to have a more direct experience of minerals. And I've learned a great deal that I hope that you might be able to have your own direct experience of. Then here's the colors. Now we have the colors up for real. Nelly, I suggest you're seeing it. Thank you. So now you can see the brown, number one girl near the middle, her husband, what we call two boy, the red, and then three girl, the green, which is the emerald green, which we'll spend a lot of time with. And then the gold is four boy, and the light green gold, which is really intended to be the colors of autumn, which could have a little reddish orange in it, but we didn't quite get that, is the five girl. And the last one is the six boy, the purple. If we go back to the other side, it's the powder blue, the one boy, which is mother's father, the deeper blue, which is really a darker blue, than slightly darker blue than this, is his wife, two girl. Then there is her father, the light green yellow, which is called the green sword of truth, and his wife, mother's mother, which is the pink, which is now where the beginning of the opening of the heart occurs. The other ones, the sapphire blue is what's called the throat, or the five boy position. And then the white and violet is the sixth girl at the top. Now, in basic understanding, there are 5 elements used in the Chinese and Ayurvedic system of the earth, air, fire, water, and wood. I prefer to include the 6th element of metal, but I understand the reason why it stops there, because the stopping is at 3. What I mean by that is the earth and the air are primarily number 1, fire and water are number 2, and metal and wood are number 3. By that, I'm referring to the front and the back of different chakra systems, 1, 2, and 3. But the earth elements, they end at 3 and they don't continue into 4. And there are a variety of reasons why, but it's basically, if you're going to go past 3, which is also the incumbent use of the mind, there is the necessity to go into the what we call the four-girl realm, which is to receive without judgment, receive without attachment. So 1, 2, and 3 encompasses the experience of utilizing the sense of all 5 senses that correspond to them. And they are smell and taste and touch and sound and sight. And those are the 5 senses, but at the level 4, it inverts into another series of senses. But in order to be able to experience those senses, it requires that we utilize something higher. So for example, if I wanted to utilize something that's global, which is important to all of us right now, the global feeling is beyond my sight, beyond my sound. I can't smell it or taste it or touch it, but I have the capacity to develop a true actual sense of it. The sense of it, which can be a literal sense, is also a sense of compassion. It's a sense of connection. It has a higher sense of unity. It transcends the boundaries of my culture. It transcends the boundaries of my country. It transcends eventually the boundaries of race, and it opens up the higher principles at level 6. So in nature, if we're going to be able to experience the higher principles of nature, we would utilize our mind to understand logically what we're going to do. We're logically going to experiment with directing the vital forces of nature through the living physical body. In order to do that, we would utilize the functions of the mind that create the bridge. So there's a bridge between the physical experience, which is facilitated by the mind, and the primary instrument that facilitates that transition is imagery, imagination, and the circulation of that imagination with feeling. So the reason we're using these colors is that they correspond to feeling experiences that you can imagine. And we're imagining those colors with feeling, and we're beginning to utilize the opportunity to feel those moving through the acupuncture points on the toes, coming up the smooth muscles on the insides of the legs, coming up to the coccyx and the pelvic cavity, moving up through the 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we're talking about circulating the energy through and up the physical body, where for all of us, virtually, the energy flows around us rather than through us. So if you could go to the next one. This dynamic we're referring to is mimicked by the, whatever we call, I forget the number of trees we have. I think it's something like 3 trillion trees on Earth, and they're all doing the same thing. There are countless trillions of blades of grass. There's somewhere in the neighborhood of 60,000 species of grass, 6,000 species of trees, but they're all doing the same thing. They're doing something I like to call xylem up and phloem down. I had to learn that back in my college days and the botanical studies of the xylem being that means by which water flows inside the middle of a tree, and it comes up through the smooth dynamic flows, and it comes into the leaves, and there it's involved in the respiration function of photosynthesis, sometimes called transpiration and photosynthesis. It takes in the carbon dioxide, which you can see as the red, and the carbon, the black. You can see that, and it takes the processes combined with light, water, and produces the energy or the sap that now determines the growth of the tree, and that goes xylem up, and then the growth comes down. So xylem up and phloem down. Now the phloem down function also corresponds to different times of the year. So the autumn, for example, where the leaves are coming down, and the spring they go up, and the autumn they come down. But what's also coming down very slowly is the sap that will keep the roots growing, because they grow during the winter. They grow, they extend, and they now produce another ring on the tree. So this xylem up, phloem down process is part of the remarkable miracle of photosynthesis. Now, if you look at the red dots below the leaves, those are oxygen molecules that have been liberated through the process of photosynthesis. They are slightly heavier and they fall downward. And on the upper left diagram of the chart, the energy comes in from above, the carbon comes in from above, carbon dioxide, and the oxygen is released down below in a series of little openings, stomatas that actually release the oxygen molecules down. Now, the fascinating thing about this whole process is that it's always assimilating minerals, and it has two kinds of basic minerals that it assimilates. First, it assimilates what's called earth-based minerals. Earth-based minerals are minerals that have never been digested by a plant. Then it has colloidal minerals. Those are minerals that have been digested by a plant. So if an earth-based mineral goes on this journey up the xylem through the water and goes up into the process of photosynthesis, it has been now digested by the plant. If the leaf falls off and becomes organic matter, the organic matter is called a colloidal mineral that can be more readily absorbed by the human body and by the bodies of mammals and insects. So the richest part of the soil is the earth. Yes, earth encompasses minerals and water and soil and earth, but it is primarily composed of, in ideal soil, lots of organic matter that has colloidal minerals. So as we move through this experience of xylem up, I'm encouraging you to go here. This is one of my favorite pictures. I've used this, I must confess, thousands of times. And the reason for it is I've done my best to go inside this image, which, by the way, is a photograph of a single vertebrae of the spine. And for me, the vertebrae of the spine, they're alive. They have all the qualifications for being living. There was a survey once, and almost 70% of the people surveyed do not believe that bones are living. But actually, they're alive. They eat, they breathe, they reproduce, they grow, they die. So they have all the qualifications of being living. Now, I like to go here because the bones also corresponds to the mineral kingdom. So for me, the number one girl, I correspond her to bones and the mineral kingdom. So if I want to be able to vitalize the human body, my own body, the goal is to circulate the torus energy through my focus, through the imagination, adding in the water of feeling and circulate it through the bones. Now, one of my reasons for doing this is you see the dark spots to the left. You see how the dark spots have a circle where the bone has deteriorated around it. To me, this is a form of memory. These are ancestral memories of being able to go inside the bone and vitalize the bone. Now, I will tell you, and I'd be welcome to share with you at another time, how I would periodically aim myself through my imagination to go into that bright white spot in the middle, and I would do my best to put myself as a small humanoid inside that bone crystal. Now, I found out, to save you a lot of time, go to the right, spin, if you will, counterclockwise from above. If you can look down, you'd be spinning counterclockwise. You go into the right, spin counterclockwise, and then you feel this with your skin. Inside here, you can be naked, by the way. You feel it with your skin, and you feel it with the back of the neck and the skin, and you go inside and you feel. Now is the time to add in some really good dance music. Now, I have done this hundreds of times, and the reason I do it is because of the experiences I've had. Down here, I've had moments where lightning has gone up my spine. I've traveled into different places. I've had remarkable experiences, and you just don't know what you're missing by not spending a little time inside your own mineral kingdom. Now, my understanding of this is that bones are primarily memory, and you can take your attention inside your ancestral memory to experience it, feel it, and vitalize it. There is a technique that I did for 20 years. It was a form of what's called Kriya. It was a Kriya breathing, where you utilize temperature and imagination, a cold temperature, and your imagination of something, water moving up the spine, and you take it up to the top of the head, you make a pool, you wait 3 seconds, bring it back down. For those of you who are interested in that technique, I would share it. But it's how to be able to move the vital forces through the bones, cleaning the ancestral memory on the way, and restoring their vitality. So when we're doing the mineral kingdom and the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom, I like to move that energy through my bones. That's why this one is here, is to bring you right down into your bones. Next. Now all of these are the eventual outcome of the exercise you're doing. Now I know that sounds strange, but all the colors of the flowers you see are different minerals in different combinations. So the journey of a mineral, by the way, there are some minerals that take hundreds of millions of years to come from very close, deeper in the earth, closer to the core, diamonds, sapphires, rubies, garnets, and a few others that I can't mention in the moment. They have a 100 million year journey till they finally reach the place where they can be assimilated by a tree or a blade of grass, and they become colloidal, and then eventually all of the colors of all of the minerals correspond to the bouquet of colors you are ideally supposed to have in the brain. Now I know that's odd, but I'm saying that the mineral kingdom and all of its composite colors can make a journey and come out a blossom. But by the way, that same journey is designed to be the journey of the soul on its way to higher consciousness. Let's just hope it doesn't take all of us 100 million years to do that. I was fascinated by a recent documentary that I really enjoyed. I recommend it, called The Secrets of the Sun. And it described how a photon of light can take 100 million years to move to another level. And it take 100,000 years to get through that level. And then it takes on the last little rim, which is very much like the skin of the earth, it takes 2 months for it to move through the final level, and it takes 8 minutes for a photon of light to finally arrive, after hundreds of millions of years, to arrive at sunlight creating photosynthesis. So my appreciation of minerals extends from the core of the earth to me to the heavens. And that means every star in the universe has a color. Our sun happens to be a yellow sun. Well, there are purple and green and they're pink and they're white. And there's all these different colors of suns that correspond to the same vibrational composition that we have in the mineral kingdom. So as above, so below, inside out. And the interesting part about this is it seems that the universe waits for us to decide to participate in the universe. I know that's odd, but it seems that the only way for me to progress is to have a sincere desire to want to feel. And the sincere desire to want to feel can accelerate, and it can grow, and it can circulate more feelings, more life, and my feelings start to grow. Well, fortunately for us, we run right into memories. Those are called ancestral memories, where we find ourselves triggered by something so we can go back down and re-examine our mineral kingdom again. Now, this is a graphic of 4 seasons. The one on your lower right representing winter, and that's the ascent coming up to the heart. At the equinox, it transforms over into spring, and it goes to the top of the head on the solstice, and then it comes down the back of the neck to the back of the shoulder blades, over the summer into autumn, and then the last part, autumn again into winter, is at the second equinox of the year. So this is a sequence: winter, spring, summer, and fall. Winter, spring, summer, and fall. This is a circulation that is happening to us all the time, except it's happening around us. People don't realize that the seasons are happening around us, but we're bundled up, we're staying in the house. It's either too hot or too cold. We want to be just comfortable. You know, we all want to stay in one little place. And occasionally we venture out into nature when we're well covered, or we're, you know, not going to be too cold or too hot. But this circulation of life force up the front of the body and down the back is also similar to up the middle and down the side. And this is the reason why I recommend that we spend some time enjoying the mineral kingdom. Next. Now, part of the reason for this is a theoretical view of the human existence. The human body in the middle is covered by a series of rings around it. Now, these rings have specific locations. They're not mobilized, so we're like, if you look at the rings of a tree, we have a series of rings around us. Now, if our great-grandmother, number 3, had a difficult life, then that ring has a difficulty inside of it. Then as we start to grow, this circulation is moving, and this now produces, this series of rings produces the most challenging thing that you'll ever go through, and it's called relationships. So the energetic field that produces the world around us now produces a specific sequence of attractions that bring us exactly the energy locked up in one of those rings. Now, I'm suggesting that the opportunity is to add more powder blue, pink, white from the outside, because that represents the higher experiences of love and the presence of consciousness and the mobilization of divine experiences. That if we were to appreciate the divine principle that all matter is ultimately created by light. It took me a while to get that, about 40 years, to recognize that matter is actually the result of an explosion of a star, an explosion of a universe, where the explosion of that energy, it solidifies at different densities or weights, and it produces the periodic table of chemistry. But the entire periodic table of chemistry and all the minerals on Earth are actually the result of a star. I can't remember the song that's "We are stardust, we are golden." Well, I didn't realize those guys were actually right, or whoever they were, guys or girls. I don't mean to be sexist on this. So the mobilization of the mineral kingdom is the appreciation of the divine intelligence actualized through matter. That's how I see the mineral kingdom. The divine presence, divine intelligence, manifesting through a sequence of minerals corresponding to colors that correspond to chakras and grandparents, and you name it, and you name it, you name it, all the vibrations on Earth, all of the beautiful flowers, all of those things are mobilizing. I read something once that a single molecule of a flower's fragrance can linger in the air for 10,000 years, depending on the species of the flower. So it takes apparently about 10,000 years for a single molecule to circle the Earth. I go, wow, wouldn't it be nice to read the molecules of the flowers that have existed for millions of years? Well, that's my own experience of spirit body, physical body, soul. To me, the soul really is the powder blue, pink, and white. It corresponds to how I can learn from outside in. It's taken me decades to appreciate the importance of outside in. By that I mean air, water, light, food, and most important of all, touch. The ability to be able to be embodied comes through the experience of outside in. So man and woman, they get together from outside in. The anatomy of man and woman is man outside, woman inside. It's outside in. It mobilizes this experience. It produces conception. It mobilizes the reality of an evolution of a soul, and on and on and on. Probably better let me move. This one now is designed to say, look, how do I take my place in the divine celestial order? If the physical experience is a very small part of matter, and now they are scientifically saying that dark matter vastly outnumbers physical matter, and that the mass of the physical world is really quite small. I mean, that's incomprehensible to me, because now the latest experience with the Hubble and the Webb telescopes, it shows us hundreds of trillions of galaxies, and those are only the ones so far we can observe. I can't do the math on hundreds of trillions of galaxies, each of them holding hundreds of billions of stars, and each one of those holding planets, and so on and so on, all of those. So I would be rather delighted to visit them myself. And that would be that if I could take this spaceship that you see in front of you, no, I mean on the screen, the spaceship of the human being actualizing the instruments of mobilization. Well, I mean by that is that the human being has the capacity to mobilize the instruments of progress. Somehow it seems to wait like a seed, and there are known examples of some seeds being capable of lasting over 50,000 years. They're even now examining spores that are 100 million years old under the ice in the Antarctic, and they're now actually getting them to grow again. So you and I are like seeds waiting to germinate and to grow. Apparently, we're only given so much time to learn how to do that in the body, and then we get a lot of time to do it out of the body. But the ideal time to begin the process of growing that seed has to do with me desiring to want to feel my existence, and to be able to feel my existence inside myself and mobilize the desire to want to grow. In the process of doing that, and I'm taking you through a sequence, by the way, the sequence now grows from feeling into a greater capacity for empathy. When I combine my feeling, humility, my sense of will, my passion, and my purpose, and I orient it toward truth, it produces a series of experiences called wisdom. If I just go toward truth for the accumulation of knowledge, it stays in a spectrum that stays at 3. But if I go and mobilize the experience of feeling for a passion for truth, of a soul-based emotional truth, it now circulates into a category I call the emerald green experience of what actually vitalizes the human body. And now that is more readily assimilated by the will, and we're on our way to 4, 5, and 6. So I'm suggesting that the ever deepening appreciation of the mineral kingdom and how it's utilized and absorbed by the plant kingdom and then distributed into the animal kingdom, it's given me pause to stop and consider. I still have habits of eating meat, and I realize that it may be true that anytime I kill something that has a central nervous system and has a capacity for an emotional reaction, I may actually be violating the higher laws that I will one day need to come down and correct at my number one, which is the place of belief systems again. Now, I just particularly like this picture here. If you can see it in its entirety, you see a man and a woman sitting at the bottom of a tree. This to me represents a family tree, but it also represents masculine and feminine energies. So the male is sitting in the cool, feminine side, because for me, the male represents what I call the ascending yin of boys. 1, humility; 3, truth; 5, free will. So humility, truth, and free will actualizes the opportunity to grow the future. So everything that you see on the right side of the screen are the endless opportunity for choices. Everything on the left side of the screen holds all previous choices. So the girl to the left represents all those energies on the father's side of the family. The father's side of the family is very powerful, very important, because it is one girl. It nurtures and vitalizes life and sustains it. It is such a powerful force. It cannot be lost. It cannot be surrendered. Sorry. It cannot be given away. It cannot be killed. It cannot be suicided. It is the essential essence of the soul itself. That's number one. Number 3 is the emerald green experience of the vitalization of one's physical experience in the material world. That's also the plant kingdom. Then the 1, the source of life manifesting, is the 3 girl generates the physical body. So the 3 girl, the emerald green, takes the information and now crafts a body corresponding to the belief systems of what's held within the previous generations or attitudes or feelings. Then the 1 and the 3 combine to go into the 5. The 5 corresponds to, in the physical body, the distribution of proteins and the distribution of energies and the distribution of feelings. And that corresponds to the immune system. The immune system for me is a system that touches beyond the physical body and inside the physical body. Excuse me. Now, this particular picture, I'm suggesting that you combine this picture on the equinox. Why? Well, the equinox is when the planetary and solar forces are aligned in such a way that there is an equality of masculine and feminine between the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere. Let me get a drink. Just give me 1 second. Pardon me. So I'm suggesting that on the moment of the equinox, within more or less a 90-minute window of the equinox in your particular location, that the global planetary forces can be utilized by utilizing that force, moving it through your body. And for me, the goal is to take 2 sides of the family tree and help to merge them or collapse them. You remember that spirit body where you had the rings? Well, inside my rings, I have, and we all do, little rocks or pockets or frozen memories inside of our ring. And all of those frozen memories from my father's family and all of those frozen memories from my mother's family, they're trying to get together to provide for me to have an emotional experience. I'm suggesting that on the equinox, it might be possible to be able to collapse this resistance in the spirit body and allow the vital forces of nature to momentarily circulate through the physical body, theoretically providing the opportunity for a transformation of one's physical health. More about that at another time. I think we're close to the end here. I like this particular feeling because it takes my feeling at the bottom, it takes the feelings of the mineral kingdom and the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom, and I like to circulate those feelings. So for me, it's about the circulation of life force, the presence of the mineral kingdom, the vital functions of the plant kingdom, the distribution capacities of consciousness and the animal kingdom, and circulating those through me. This is another way of seeing it in color. This, if you start at the bottom triangle on the right, that's 1 boy, and it comes up to 3 boy, 1, 3, and 5 boy. This meets at the equinox of the heart, transforms into father's family, because originally 1, 3, and 5 was mother's family. It transforms into boys 2, 4, and 6 as it comes up the front. 6 boy is the head and the top of the head. At the very top, midday, it goes into 1 girl, and now it starts a descent from 1 girl, 3 girl, 5 girl. And if you go back for a second and look at the 3 girl, there's something intriguing for me about the presence of 3 girls location, because I've had experiences with things on the back of my brain and neck, and I have felt energies on the back of my neck and the back of my brain function, and it goes in the top of the shoulders. And I've noticed that when I go over the top sometimes and I take it in through the back, it takes a different route. So I don't know what's going to happen, but for me, I am now taking this energy up the front, over the top, and in. So I'm trying to take my 3 girl, which is a emerald green liquid healing of the physical body and vitalizing the physical form. If you come on down from the green, you come down to the gold, which is actually the bridge between autumn and, summer and autumn. So that bridge is also the same thing as sunset. So the sunset of the time and the sunset of the year. In some traditions, the year begins on the equinox, this autumn equinox, and that's an interesting cycle culturally. Then below the heart function, you have girls 2, 4, and 6. These also correspond to the sleep state and the remarkable things that can happen between number 4 and number 6, which is where the human being is actually exiting the physical body to continue its education in the spirit world. So you can utilize this chart another way if you wish. This is one of my all-time favorites. This is a single drop of feeling. Whatever the aspiration of that feeling is generated by a sincere desire. If I aspire to experience something, I personally like to, like a dropper, I like to drop that drop of feeling into the center point of this Fibonacci spiral, which for me, this Fibonacci spiral corresponds to time. And I found that if I will drop just a single drop of feeling every hour, and by the way, that corresponds to me so far about 5 to 7 seconds. 5 seconds should do it. If I have a sincere desire to want to feel something like an eyedropper, I drop that feeling of sincerity into my own heart, and that's the thing I'm aspiring to. And then the next hour, I drop in another drop, and the next hour, I drop in another drop, go about my business, drop in another one. Sometimes forget an hour, but usually get there within 2 hours, drop another drop. Now, I found that if I continue to do that over one cycle of the day, meaning I can drop a drop in at 8 p.m. and then not be concerned about it until 4 a.m. But if I drop a drop in during the day, it has a certain effect, but it doesn't stay. Whatever the thing I was aspiring to is remembered somewhere, but it doesn't seem to operate. But what I found was, over a series of efforts, I'm trying to save you a lot of time with experimentation, that if I took a single eyedropper of a sincere feeling and I continued that same cycle over a month of winter and a second month of winter and the third month of winter, I produced a cycle of 90 days, roughly, right? So a cycle of 90 days, now that thing I had at that degree of the eyedropper desire is locked in. And I notice in my own experience that it's still there. So months later, the thing that I didn't do as much the same way later, it's still there. But I did find out after several years of experimentation, if I took the 90 days of a season and I took the same feeling into another season, like, you know, winter into spring, and I put that, it became almost like seeds that began to grow. So if I took all those feelings, then, now the feelings I was generating all winter are given a means of self-expression. Now, and then I get excited and I want to continue that because now I know it goes into the 1 girl, 3 girl, 5 girl, which means material manifestation and the continuous memory of the thing I dropped as 1 drop. So I found a single drop of feeling to be far more valuable than 2 hours of meditation on some subject, then it's lost. You know, maybe there's a benefit to coming back day by day and doing 2 hours of meditation. Did I say medication? Well, sometimes, yes, we do self-medication by activities to avoid the experience of feeling. But that's why I like this. For me, it's the best model of time combined with feelings that I've found, and I'm looking for a better one.
I only have one more.
Ah, yes. Now the practical understanding. I know this seems simple. It says present and feel at the top. It says past and circuits to the lower left. It says future cycles, different than circuits, desire. Future desire, building, ideally, truth, to lead into new experiences. Those new experiences now are stored within the memory, and the memory sends us, well, the red line between memory and feeling is triggers. Now, I confess that this looks like a, fairly mundane graphic, but if I could craft the David and show it to you, this represents something far more beautiful than the David itself. It means, how does the human soul feel, build desire, grow truth, feel more, and then in the process of feeling more, what comes automatically are those rings. So in my memory, there are circuits. So the past circuits are, how did my great-grandfather feel about his son? How did my father's father's father feel about his son? That's a circuit. How did my grandfather, my father's father, feel about his father? That's a circuit. How someone felt about me, how I felt about them, that's a circuit. How my great-grandfather on my mother's side felt about his wife and how he felt about his son, and so on. All these are circuits. Now, a circuit would be defined as something that is a closed system of energy. To me, that's a frozen or closed system of energy. So inside all of us are tens of thousands. No, I'm afraid there might be more than that. There might be tens of millions, but I don't know the actual number of frozen circuits inside of us. So if I start to want to grow, the memory mechanism starts to circulate to me the precise sequence of frozen circuits that would enable me to continue to grow. Not always easy to do. I might have a desire to be healthy and happy. Here comes somebody in the parking lot. Here comes somebody on the television. I'm having a triggered reaction, and I can make a choice. I can say no to the emotion aggressively. I can say no to the emotion passively, meaning I'll do something to attack myself, or I can say yes to the emotion, realizing it's part of the divine plan for me to take that feeling not outward, not like the torus does, but reverse the torus and come inward. Meaning, show me the truth about this feeling, because I want to be responsible for every feeling inside me, no matter where they came from. Even if they came from a great-grandmother and their difficulty in life, maybe they were in the Holocaust or they were somewhere else, or they were part of the Russian Revolution, or my great-grandparents, part of the American Civil War, those are all crystals inside of me. I'm the only one to have access to these crystals. No one else. Yes, a therapist can help me move them out of my spirit body by correctly identifying them with me. That's called communication and therapy, but no other form of therapist can remove those feelings. They can remove some of the damage. So vibrational instruments can remove, homeopathic or color or so on, or music or art or meditation can remove some of the damage. But the reality is that the original crystal memory stays in my soul. It's not removed when people do biochemical therapies, which I appreciate entirely, or vibrational therapies, which are also extremely important for saving lives. But the only way for me to be truly responsible is to feel, want to feel more. But in the moment of my triggering, desire to know the truth about this feeling and every feeling like this I've ever denied. Whew. Now you do those a few times and something begins to change in the feeling and the desire. Guess what changes? You have a few experiences of that. One single word changes. It's called sincerity. Because you'll find that at first you're just experimenting with, oh, here's a trigger. He said, maybe do this. Instead of punching the guy out, I might go examine the reason why I'm frustrated. I turn on the television and there's a political battle. I turn on something else and there's a religious battle, and then there's a conspiracy to do all of it against my will and to possess me, hurt me, enslave me. Phew. Show me the truth about this feeling and every feeling like this I've ever denied. The sincerity just deepened. I really want to know the truth about this feeling and every feeling like this I've ever denied. And guess what happens? More comes. Stronger ones come. No, it's not like you process a circuit and it just instantly goes away. Now, that's wishful thinking. It is as you process a circuit, more of the circuit becomes revealed, but at the same time, you've done something significantly important. You've grown the quality of your integrity and your will. Now, if your will's stronger, here comes another one. You go, well, this is just me doing my addiction again. Here it comes again. At least you're watching. At least you have the will to watch your addiction. Like I'm watching my addiction to still wanting to eat hamburgers or chicken. It's going to be a while before I give up fish, but I know sooner or later, I'm going to really access the truth about the animal kingdom. And the truth about the plant kingdom, which seems to have a different function. It's designed to support me, but the animal kingdom is not designed to be eaten by me. So I'm saying the sincerity of one's desire to feel, grow in truth, actually begins to create the means to have a stronger integrity and will, and the whole expansion becomes larger. And that's what my personal experience is. And I hope that in some way or another is useful for you. I appreciate that you've come by to spend your precious time hanging out, listening to something that you may or may not want to hear, but there must be some reason how you got here. I'm thankful for your presence, because your presence gives something to me. And that is when we start to become transparent with our experience. I'm being transparent about my experience. I'm being transparent about the theories of things I'm doing. I'm transparent about the experiences I've had. I'm not saying that they're all right and they're all beautiful, but the transparency does something else. Because if I'm doing it with a friend, or I'm doing it in a community, that affects a different level. If I start to do it like on this call, there are some people who are international, so now I'm doing it globally. So if my desire to communicate and be transparent becomes individual in the family and in the community, in the country, and with myself, and becomes global, I would really like to have an authentic, transparent communication with the source of creation. In order to do that, I can't just go there and say, take me, take me, take me. No, they go, well, I'll take you if you go down to the very bottom of your memory and become responsible for the pain and suffering inside yourself. If it were the divine plan for me to have it done for me by God, it would already have been done. But my experience, by the way, I don't like this experience. I'm highly resistant to it. You mean you want me to become responsible for my own self and soul and every feeling and everything I've ever done? You mean you want me to be fully responsible? Come on, it's got to be a better way. How about grace? How about some juice? How about a little help here? Well, the sincere desire to increase the love of the divine is met by more and faster experiences of triggers that come into my life. And now I'm learning how to process them more quickly and eventually more thoroughly, until I can reach the point to process them all simultaneously. So thank you for your presence here. And
I have a question.
We have a question.
So the equinox is only in a couple of days, 3 days. It's also the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah. And at this time, we really look at, okay, what do we want to create a change in, or what do we want to heal? So you mentioned that on the equinox, it's a time for healing the past. And you also said it's about desire. So, and you, at one point you talked about intention. So can you talk a little bit more about the equinox and how we can prepare for it?
I do plan on doing another recording on specifically the equinox, because it does seem like it's God's design for a remarkable or miraculous transformation of the human being. And I do know that ancient civilizations all the way back through the pyramids and beyond have used the equinox for, quote, mysterious purposes. But my experience in the last 2 years has brought me to the point that the equinox is the time to be able to do that. So yes, I am exploring it myself. Normally, I like to experience something more thoroughly before I share it. But in this process, I'm letting you know what I'm doing, and I'm experimenting on myself, and I'm on the Rayid International Facebook. I'm putting up more dialogue about how to do that. You saw some of the ones with color. I'm wanting to take my father's family and my mother's family and take the 12 colors and converge them into white light on the moment of the equinox, which, by the way, is a specific window in your location, and a variety of other things I intend to practice to be able to stand at the fulcrum of the moment when all of the planetary forces are aligned, And I'm especially excited because this is the first equinox since we became global through the pandemic, which became a very physical experience for millions of people. I mean, it's not just the millions of people that have died. There have been hundreds of millions of people who've been sick, and they're dealing with this virus, which is really not an animal. It's not a mineral. They can't really describe it because it's technically not alive, but that's a whole nother discussion. But the question would be is, what would I do at 4 a.m.? And what I mean by that is 4 a.m. to me is the beginning of the day. So if the equinox is the beginning of the year, and in the Jewish culture, it's the beginning of the year, if the equinox is the beginning of the mother's side of the family in the northern hemisphere, because on the equinox in the northern hemisphere, we go into the mother's family for 6 months, and on the southern hemisphere, you go into the father's family for 6 months. So what would I do at the central pivot of creation? So if I had a moment where the gate opens, and I don't know how long it opens, by the way. I'm hoping it's open, longer than what I think it is. If it just opens for a moment, well, that's nice too, but I'm hoping it's 90 minutes, so I'm doing 45 minutes on either side, but I'd really rather prepare for 6 months to do it better so that I could have the better experience of it. I am experimenting with 3 levels of the heart. I'm experimenting with the pericardium. For those of you who don't know, the pericardium is a skin around the heart. Now, I've had an experience with the pericardium. As the reason I'm there is that the pericardium is a dual-walled skin. And inside the dual wall and inside the skin next to the heart is a water, but it's closer to cerebral spinal fluid. And that the heart is an electromagnetic generator. It's the largest electromagnetic generator in the body. But to me, the pericardium is where particles of dust gather. Now, I've experienced those particles of dust myself, and it's like tiny grains of sand on the skin of the heart. Now, biblically, I've heard it said, we have hearts of stone. Well, yes, I confess and realize, and I say to you openly, I have a heart of stone. And by that I mean I have a pericardium filled with unresolved emotional memories from my family tree. And I'd really like to be able to experience them more. But inside the pericardium and into the heart, there is an interesting place that's the trabecula. It's a series of parallel lines, like fibers, but they have opposing, or like a knot in a tree, they have opposing, opposite parallel lines. They're right into the heart muscle. So this is the actual instrument that does the pumping, and this is where the heart muscle dies in a heart attack. So the reason I'm focusing there is I'm wanting to take all those energies through the layers down into my physical heart, down into my emotional existence. And then the last one that I like so much is the molecule of laminin. You would do well to just look at the 3 things scientifically: pericardium, trabecula, and laminin, L-A-M-I-N-I-N. And that's a single protein molecule designed to be responsible for all cellular differentiation, all cellular migration. So it is designed to distinguish a gallbladder from a liver from a heart. So this one universal molecule makes up all of the cellular structure of my body. I like it because the molecule is designed like a cross, and it has a horizontal axis and a vertical axis. And to me, that meets on the equinox. So I'm looking for the opportunity to have the maximum experience of emotional effect on my cellular matter, on my emotional family tree, on my skin, on my, well, I have a tendency to be willing to experiment and be relentless. So I have no idea what's going to come of this because I've never actually done it before, but I've been engaging in the practice of it for some months. So what would I do at that final pinpoint? If you could do one thing, what would it be? I'm not going to tell you what mine is. I know transparency is transparency and all that, but I'm going to give you the opportunity to decide for yourself if the aperture to creation were open and you could do something, transform something, heal something, become something, let go of something. What would you choose? How sincere would it be? Well, go ahead and give it a shot if you want, but I'll give you a little announcement. There's another equinox coming up in 6 months. And then there's another one coming up in a year. And my intention is to do 3 years in a row. 3 years in a row, why? 3 months in a row is a season. 3 cycles of 3 is called birth. 9 months. You kind of know what happens between 3 and 4. Everywhere between 3 and 4, something changes. So I'm willing to do 3 years of equinox, learning and growing and circulating. And then, well, theoretically, between the 3rd and 4th year, well, I have no idea what's going to happen, but I'd rather live in that level of enthusiastic optimism than to be concerned about, you know, whose conspiracy theory is true today. So I appreciate that. And did that answer any of the question? We talked about Rosh Hashanah. What would I put there? Well, that's to be discussed.
But you are suggesting that there's the possibility of healing whatever came from your father's side and from your mother's side in that moment.
Yes, the exciting part is I am pretty sure that the damage to the body is mirrored by the distance between the body and the soul. So if you could imagine that the physical body has a boundary, and that's about the length of the arms. So about the length of the arms, you have a field of energy, the spirit body. You can call it many different things. All the different religions give it something. It's different energies. But the damage that I have in my family tree is vibrationally held within this location. The soul is bigger than this and is not vibrational. It doesn't have a waving magical thing that goes up, and it doesn't oscillate. The soul doesn't oscillate. It has a degree. But inside the spirit body, these little places, my mother's side has one charge and my father's side has another charge on a particular issue, on a particular location of my body. And the goal is to bring these two together and then collapse them. Now, I'm saying this to you clearly. I know it doesn't collapse it in the soul, but theoretically, it would collapse it in the spirit body. If I collapsed it in the spirit body, theoretically, it should allow a circulation of life force that was being impeded by those blockages. It allows a circulation of life force to, theoretically, regenerate for a period of time my physical body to the design of the new spirit body. And over a period of time, this soul will start replacing it back with the old one. But while it's coming back in, I have time to work on it. But I'm looking for producing a way for physical health to help people stay alive long enough to learn how to have a feeling. So this is designed to be a service to myself and a service to other people, to craft a way to utilize the forces of nature, cycles and seasons, and the timing to be able to do all of this and take those two energies, collapse them, And you get the option of being able to sit back and eat popcorn and giggle with me. I mean, you can go, let's just see what happens. Why don't we wait 6 months and see if he's still alive? Or wait, let's wait 3 years and see if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, right? Or it just might work. So, any other questions from the audience, if you wish? You're free to ask. Oh, by the way, if you want to ask Messenger, you can ask privately, or you can ask on the Facebook, the Rayid International Facebook. But this is an introduction to it. And by the way, I know it's hard to believe, I'm going to re-record this. I'm going to re-record this about the equinox, because talking about it also circulates my understanding and my access to information. And it is also an embodied experience of the desire to want to learn something. And I'm asking for the truth about this. So explaining it again is an option to increase my own firmness and integrity about doing that. So I'm comfortable with explaining it another 1,000 times or more.
So we do have a question. What does it mean by to know the truth about a feeling? And what does such knowledge of truth consist of?
Wow, what a wonderful question. Would you read that again?
What is meant by know the truth about a feeling? What does such knowledge of truth consist of?
Wow. Wow. That just, whew. I love a sincere question. To me, that's sincere. The best I can say is to give you only my own experience with it. It by no means is an absolute truth of something or something. It's just my own personal comprehension and my own experience about it. It took me a long time to recognize the difference between a thought and a feeling. It took me a long time to see the difference between an awareness and a consciousness. It took me a long time to come to the place, being an analytical, dual thinking kind of guy, that what I really needed was the experience of feeling. In the process of doing that, there is an opportunity, if you wish. I have several times gone on the internet to look at the history of the word feeling. And you can take it all the way back to the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita and other places, and you end up with people talking about feelings in different ways, not all of them nice. And then I did the same study through Socrates and Plato and up to philosophers and theologians over the centuries, and researched some of the information that they had about feelings, coming down to one of my favorites, Carl Jung, one of my lack of favorites, Freud and Skinner and Abrams and Hicks and all of the latest of the psychological world. And they do not agree on what a feeling is. There is a lot of debate between a feeling and an emotion, but they do agree a little bit. About 30 to 40% of the time, they describe a feeling as in the body. It's a feeling of touch, for example. It's a sensation that you feel with your body. It's a temperature you feel. It's a color that you experience. It's so on and so on. Much of this is described as impacting the body. And I'm actually in agreement with this, because the experience of it is enhanced, realized, and mobilized through experiencing it through the body. But that doesn't define what is a feeling. And for me, the way to discover that is to have a sincere desire to want to know the truth about feeling. So I've gone through that a number of times because I couldn't get the information right, if you will, on the internet, which is where Google's supposed to give you the answer to things. And the reason I don't like any of the descriptions is that it really didn't refer to, with exception of theologians in some form, it didn't refer to feelings as related to the soul. Psychologists relate it to realms of the mind. You'll have feelings in your mind. And I know now that you can have stored emotional reactions in your mind that's still in your mind. So people can have emotional addictions while still being in their mind, and that's called habits. And those habits propel emotional reactions in the body, and that produces addiction. To me, all addiction is the result of the denial of feeling. So we're back to the beginning again. All addiction is an attempt to deny the reality of who I am. Because now inside me, the reality of me, I find out that there is a whole bunch of painful things. So whether you want to call them stressors, or you want to call them emotional history, or you want to call them ancestral stuff, the experience of a pure feeling, I would have to be honest with you. And just this last week, I had an epiphany that I'm 99.9% of the time, I'm in some form of facade, a mask, a personality. I meet someone, I talk to someone, the store, home, this, that. I'm engaged in a standing wave pattern of a biochemical consistency that holds my digestion and my cellular regeneration. That's all being held in a specific standing wave pattern that has all my old injuries inside of it. So my body is constantly being reconstructed by unresolved emotional energies that I'm still avoiding. If I'm avoiding those, I'm actually having a series of emotional reactions. I'm not having a pure feeling. So I can't say to you, I know what a pure feeling is. I may have stumbled across one every now and then. I may have gotten there by Braille one day, but what is an actual feeling? That's not an easy thing to tell you I know anything about, except that I am sincerely, more sincerely now, asking for the truth about a feeling. Now, you can also ask me, well, what is truth? Well, then we're into another discussion that there's my truth, your truth, our truth, social truth, intellectual truth, truth in physics. I would like to aspire to a truth that is primarily the truth that is from the perspective of the Creator. Whatever you want to call that, I would like to aspire to a truth that comes from the Creator, not from all of my social emotional reactions, not from my ancestral tree, not from my race, not from my country, not from the global phenomenon. I'd like to be able to have one, and I can tell you I'm pretty sure that I haven't actually had one. Maybe a little bit here and there, but it's pretty rare. 99% of the time, I don't think I'm there. So my personal suggestion is find it for yourself, meaning have a sincere desire through whatever current method. If it's prayer, sometimes I like fasting. If it's talk to a friend, if it's go for a walk, if it's to examine something, if it's to read something, whatever method works best for you to increase your own personal responsibility to accentuate or grow your own soul. So that's the best I can offer for now about a feeling. And I would like a chance at another time in the future to answer this question again. But thank you for a marvelous question, and what a wonderful way to be able to begin to end this presentation. Anything else you'd like to add?
Just may I suggest that triggers are opportunities for us to feel feelings.
Yes, I think that the triggers are opportunities for us to feel our resistance to feelings. But yes, triggers, they help us feel the traumatic events of our ancestry and to learn to be more responsible for them, until eventually they begin to show the reality of a false belief system underneath it. And then that false belief system underneath that, there's an opportunity to begin to have a real feeling.
So by observing our triggers, that's the first step.
Observing the triggers, but the first step I would say would be the sincere desire to want to grow. The sincere desire to be a soul, to want to grow, to want to be who you are, be on the path.
And even that, would that be a good starting point for the equinox? Just desiring to grow?
I think that whatever anybody really sincerely wanted to experiment with on the equinox, let me know how you do. If you try something different, let me know. If something works on the equinox for you, please share it with us. So thank you for dropping by today and being part of this audience. The video will go out globally, and your participation is deeply appreciated. Thank you for coming.